Hey, good to see you. Here you are. Come on in. Welcome to Alive. Okay. Got another big question for you today. How do you define faith? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I am making tea. Do you want some tea? I think one definition of faith that's maybe a little reductive is that it is belief without evidence, right? And let's be honest, that's something we do all the time. A huge portion of our lives is rests on assumptions that we can't prove, you know? Like the idea that tomorrow is a thing. That's a kind of faith, right? But the word itself points to something deeper. Yeah, like it's a capital F, faith. It's a belief, yeah, but a sacred belief. It's believing in something not in spite of a lack of evidence, but almost because of it, if that makes sense. Here you go. And if I'm being really honest with you, this is something I struggle with and have for quite a while, because there's a skeptical side of me that believes that our assumptions should scale with available evidence, right? But I can't deny the other side. I can't deny that there's a pull that I feel toward something larger that I cannot and will not ever be able to explain. And I carry that tension, you know, between those two ideas. And the older I get, the more important that tension feels. So I think it's worth asking, what is faith, really? What do you think? Yeah. Interesting. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So today I am thrilled because Rainn Wilson is stopping by. He is an actor, comedian, and author, but he's best known as TV's Dwight Schrute on NBC's The Office. Absolute legend. But he's way bigger than Scranton. He's a 3-time Emmy nominee, co-founder of the digital media company Soul Pancake, and author of the New York Times bestseller, The Bassoon King. And also, he is the author of a book that I like very much called Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And I believe there is a sequel to this book coming out November 4th called The Soul Boom Workbook, which is kind of an interactive workbook, as I understand it, for spiritual seekers and creatives, and you can journal in it, and there's projects, and it sounds like a very, very, very cool thing. But I love Rainn. I got to speak to him in depth on his podcast, Soul Boom, earlier this year, and I found him to be hilarious, but also a true seeker. To the degree that people are living an examined life, he is doing that. I believe that in a very embodied way. And it's something that I frankly admire. Oh, and he is here. Well, hello, Rainn.
Steve Burns as I live and breathe.
We meet again, sir. Oh, yes. Oh, please don't touch the glass. You'll get fingerprints all over it. And that will, and I know you to be greasy and oleaginous.
I don't know what that means.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Hi. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Steve. Big fan. First time caller.
It is really nice to see you again. I just want to say that I really had a great time on your pod. I thought that was just a wonderful conversation that went by too fast in a lot of ways. So thanks.
It was a gorgeous conversation. The audience just loved you, really responded to your story, and it was a really beautiful melding of kind of what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to do. So thank you for being a part of Soul Boom, and I'm so happy to be on your new thing.
Well, look, I was thrilled to be there, and I love what you're trying to do, honestly. I think that I just think it's great. And were you always like this? Were you always this sort of depth bomb human being? Were you always concerned with these enormous questions? Like, how did you get here?
Well, there's a number of levels to that question and that story. I would say, yes, I've always been metaphysically curious. It's never just been enough for me to kind of like, hey, try and live a nice life and be a good guy, don't hurt anybody, and enjoy and have some nice hobbies and a career. I always wanted to go deeper. That's what she said. And but part of the reason that is I grew up a member of the Baha'i Faith.
Yeah.
And when you grow up a Baha'i, you're reading quotes from the Buddha and from the Bible and from the Hebrew Bible and from the Quran and, you know, a lot of big questions about the soul and the meaning of life and God and purpose. And so I grew up, you know, listening to and reading these kind of metaphysical works, praying, singing, meditating. This was part of our home life. We would have Buddhist monks over and born-again Christians over and, you know, spiritual seekers over at our house in the 70s and in Olympia, Washington and Seattle, Washington. And so this was just in the groundwater of me growing up. So that is a big part of it.
That tracks. Right. Okay. So you're like little young Rainn Wilson meditating with some Soto Zen Buddhists on your shag rug in Washington State. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Was there like a moment though that you can recall, like when you were a little kid where you thought, oh, I think I am deeply concerned with questions that exceed my capacity to understand them with reason. You know, did you have a moment where you kind of turned inward that you can recall?
Well, not as a child.
Yeah.
I think I was like a little born-again Baha'i as a kid. Like I was very into my faith and going to Baha'i summer camp and winter camp and youth activities and prayer gatherings. And so, which was great, you know, no harm there. I think when I was 21 moving to New York City to become an actor, that's when things started to go a little cockamamie for me. And I rejected my faith of my childhood and kind of wanted to experience life on life's terms. I just wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be an actor, much like yourself, moving to New York in the 90s to be an actor. And although I'm a little older than you. And that's when things got a little more complicated.
Well, before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit about Baha'i for people who don't understand the Baha'i faith?
Sure. So the Baha'i faith, to boil it down to its essence, believes that there's only one God.
Yeah.
This God is not a man with a beard who's judgmental. It's not patriarchal. It's not humanoid. This is, in the Baha'i faith, the main term for God is the unknowable essence. So we are in service to the unknowable essence that is the source of all life and creativity. And this essence wants humanity to grow spiritually. So every 500 or 1,000 years or so, he, she, it, they send down a great spiritual teacher. We know a lot of these teachers like the Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, Moses, Jesus, and Baha'is believe in all of these spiritual traditions and teachers and holy books, and also believe that there is a new divine teacher for this day and age who goes by the title of Baha'u'llah. He lived in Persia and the Middle East in the 19th century and wrote hundreds of books and tablets and prayers. So as a Baha'i, I'm also a Jew. As a Baha'i, I'm also a Buddhist. As a Baha'i, I'm also a Christian, because it's all part of one faith that is ever revealing chapters of the same religion. And the latest chapter is this beautiful revelation of Baha'u'llah. And Baha'is simply try and be in service to humanity and to the world, do the right thing, and try and make the world a better place. That's basically it.
Well, I like all that. What did you say? You are in service to the unknowable essence. Is that what you said?
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. Why are we compelled to believe in something we can't know?
Well, there's an essential mystery, I think, at the heart of being alive. There's several. I'll start with one, and that is the mystery of consciousness itself. So here we are. I'm sitting in Ventura County. You're sitting in the mountains of New York State somewhere. And we're connected by a stream of electrons and Wi-Fi. I don't even know. I'm not going to pretend to know how that works.
Yeah, it's satellites and electricity and gnomes. I think there's gnomes working on this that are helping us.
And a few gnomes along the way, yes. And we're discussing the meaning of life and being a human being, and we're new friends, and we greatly respect each other. We have warm feelings for each other in our hearts. As I look at you, I also am pinged with memories of Blue's Clues and the wonderful times I had with my son watching the reruns, and how warm you were and interesting and mesmerizing and safety creating. Well, it's true. And now you're doing the same thing in a conversation. And as I'm speaking to you, my ears work, my eyes work. I'm having a 3D experience that involves emotions, memory, intellect, imagination, and a heightened, elated, heart-filled sense of being alive. And this is the mystery of consciousness. Now, to the materialists, this is simply a matter of brain waves and neural transmissions and, neurochemicals. But when you say that to 98% of people, they're like, yeah, but it's so much more. And I know that there's neurons and neurochemicals, but my experience of breathing and feeling and loving and connecting and creating art is so much richer than that. So there's an essential mystery of just being alive that no one can figure out whatsoever. This is where faith starts. They've been doing brain scans about consciousness for 40 years. No one knows any more today than they knew 40 years ago. You can kind of see a little blurb of, when you're feeling this, maybe it kind of is over here, but actually it's kind of over here. And when you have a memory, this kind of happens, but sometimes this kind of happens. And this kind of mystery of consciousness, to me, is the first step on the path of the mystery of being alive.
This holiday season, give the gift of epic sound with JLab. So I don't know if you're shopping for a music enthusiast like me, or a fitness enthusiast, or a podcast enthusiast. Sound matters. We're constantly listening to media through headphones, and how it sounds matters. And JLab has you covered. They've got the JBuds Lux, the over-ears with great noise canceling and something like 70 hours of playtime. And then they've got the JBuds Pods with 56 hours of playtime, and they also have noise canceling. So look for the blue box at retailers everywhere, or shop jlab.com and use code ALIVE for 15% off your order today.
Okay, so if you're anything like me, you've waited until the last possible second to start shopping for the holidays. And that's not a great idea in my experience, because what ends up happening is everyone gets a pair of socks or a scarf or just something lame, and everyone feels bad about it. And mostly because the gift is so impersonal, which is why this year I'd like to suggest Aura Frames. It's a digital picture frame. It is infinitely personalizable, and they're really wonderful. I've gotten them for many people that I care about, including Donovan Patton, the guy who plays Joe, Blue's Clues. His family got one. They love it. And they come in a gift box, so you get to skip a whole step. They're wonderful. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code ALIVE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code ALIVE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. And show the show a little support by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So, does your family have any holiday traditions like mine? We do like a tacky Christmas present award. And then another tradition we have is chaos, utter chaos. And it can be really overwhelming. And actually, I've decided to make it a holiday tradition to get some quiet time and reflect about the real meaning of the holidays. So if you are someone who gets overwhelmed by the holidays and is looking for a little clarity, why not try BetterHelp online therapy this December as a way to close the year with clarity instead of chaos? The BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S. They've got over 30,000 therapists, and it really can be that first step. They have an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session. That's based on 1.7 million reviews. So, this December, start a new tradition by taking care of you. Our listeners get 10% off at betterhelp.com/SteveAlive. That's betterhelp.com/SteveAlive.
Well, how do you know?
Like, why? Steve, why do we have it? We don't need
consciousness?
Yeah, we don't need this
we
consciousness.
Don't need consciousness? You mean self-awareness?
No.
Like reflexive consciousness? Like I know that I am? Like that kind of consciousness? Or do you mean like walking around?
I'm the totality of consciousness. Creativity, love, memory, will, volition,
right.
Emotion. Like we could have simply been the next level of like chimpanzee or ape or orangutan and had a slightly bigger brain pan than them. And yet we have been given so much more that we absolutely do not need to procreate the species.
Okay. But just because we don't know something doesn't make it sacred. Just because we can't complete the sentence doesn't make it a meaningful mystery. You know what I mean? It could just be a gap in our understanding that we're chasing. What do you say to that argument?
I would say that the materialists have been arguing that for a very long time, and they're not getting even an iota closer to having an understanding of consciousness. Mm-hmm. But let me take you a step further. So there's consciousness number one, but the next step or parallel to consciousness is love. Love is something that cannot be measured. It can't be quantified. It can't be contained. It can't be described. It can't be found on any MRI. And it is it exists on so many different levels. There's love of nature, there's love of our children, of our spouse, a romantic partner, there's romantic love, there's friendship love, like you and I are developing. There's love there. Wait, is mine doing that too?
I didn't know it was going to do that, but it was so good. It was so good.
Oh, that was so cool.
I know. I'm doing it again.
That was so cool. Come on. Oh, man, that's amazing.
Turn on
Look at
your
that.
heart light.
Oh, keep going. Keep going.
Let it shine wherever you go. All right. Sorry.
But again, there's this other mystery of what is love. And yes, maybe someday there's an algorithm, a program, a lab experiment, an MRI, a brain scan that goes, there is love. We've figured it out from exactly what neuron, exactly what chemicals and dopamines and are being released. But I highly doubt that to be the case, because these experiences are transcendent. And you can rationalize it all you want, but just go talk to someone about it and they'll be like, love is a mystery. Consciousness is a mystery. And why we're here and everything around us and how it all effortlessly works and ties together is also a transcendent mystery. And to me, that's not God, but it's a finger pointing to the unknowable essence that we discussed earlier.
I get that. And in full disclosure here, Rainn, I have always, my whole life, right? It's weird. On doing this podcast thing, I'm often talking to people about things I have never really talked to people about, which is, I think, maybe a good thing. But my whole life, I have been very tempted by faith, right? But I have always been impulsively, instinctively resistant to the idea. There's a skeptic side of me that really does want our assumptions to scale with our empirical knowledge. Our empirical knowledge about the universe should form our beliefs. That seems to be, to my brain, that seems to be the smart path forward. But I cannot deny that my whole life I have felt pulled. I have felt a gravity. I have perceived or sensed something more, something larger that I cannot explain. And yet, surrendering to that in any way has always felt to me like, oh, well, that is a failure of your mind. And you should not do that. But the older I get, the more I am reevaluating all of that. But I see all kinds of problems with it. Like all kinds of problems with it.
Sure.
On one side, I talk to someone like you and I get really into it. I'm like, yes, that sounds like exactly what the world is. But it's always something with two blades on it, right? It's always got two sharp sides. One side is, yes, these are the questions with which to concern yourself in this world. Is there something divine? Can I know that thing? How do I relate to that? What happens when I die? What happens in the meantime? And what is that sense that I perceive? But then there's also the other side, which is like, when people organize around this idea of faith and believing in things for which they don't have evidence, and they are so ardent and adhered to them, that's the most volatile and often destructive part of human history. So I feel like there's two sides to that. How do you reconcile that paradox?
Well, I imagine a lot of people are listening to you right now nodding their heads, because the amount of trauma caused by religion, both on a global scale and on an individual level, is, undeniable. Wars in the name of an all-loving God. Shalom means peace. Islam means peace.
Yeah.
And people are growing up in churches that shame them for being different than the norm, that talk about people dying and burning in hell for eternity. Like, what a mean, unknowable essence that would be. If like,
exactly.
Oh, you don't believe in this part of the church? You're going to burn in hell, not for like 3.5 years to teach you a lesson, but like forever, eternal damnation. Like, what a colossal misreading of the Bible, first of all, and, tool of fear to shame people and keep them down. So many people have rejected religion. And what I talk about in Soul Boom is like, have they thrown the spiritual baby out with the religious bathwater? Because there are pure, beautiful, universal ideas at the heart of all of the world's faiths that have to do with service, they have to do with ethics and morals, they have to do with, which is just doing the right thing and figuring out what that is, and, peace, connectedness, building community, transcendence, creativity, mutuality, and distilling these universals is what we have to put our focus on. I do think that there can be a lot of good that comes out of organized religion, and I do think we have lost something by spending 50 years rejecting organized religion. We've lost a lot having to do with community. But I certainly understand, and no one likes hypocrisy. And time again, you just see hypocritical, beliefs. But I would say, too, communism was the same way. Communism was this grand idea that the workers are going to share in the resources and the means of production. Great idea. But it's never even been remotely close to enacted. And I'm not advocating for communism necessarily, but there are some great grand ideas in the middle of it. And religion has great grand ideas that has not been close to being enacted. The life of Jesus has not been close to being enacted on an institutional level. But maybe we need to try and do that better without creating some kind of wacky cult.
You were making a distinction between faith and religion, which is someplace I want to go.
Or spirituality and religion, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess we were saying that faith is kind of this sacred belief or trust in that which is unknowable, at least on some level. And it's a leaning into this grand mystery, as you were saying. But it seems like when it becomes religious, that's when faith sort of hardens into these totalizing ideologies that then go on to preach absolute certainty about the very things they admit that they cannot know. When that happens, are we taking what should be a meaningful encounter with mystery and just adding a bunch of human ideas to it? Sort of spoiling it with human impulse.
Yeah. There is a metaphor in the Baha'i Faith that the reason that there's so many of these spiritual teachers is that when you look at Jesus's life and work and words, if you just read the red letter Bible and what he said and what he did, it is the most beautiful story you've ever seen in your life. It was someone who went always to the poorest and most rejected parts of the population, who served them selflessly and washing their feet, and healing the sick, going into where there's lepers, and always talking about, service to God and just loving neighbors. And then, then there's churches that grow up, and there's bishops, and there's rifts, and there's different books of the Bible, and then there's the, I'm blanking on the name, and Constantine has everyone meet in that conference in the 330, and they reject certain books of the Gnostic gospel, and they decide, and then it becomes more and more, it becomes part of the Roman Empire, and it's a Holy Roman Empire, and then the Pope can't be differentiated between power structures. And from a Baha'i perspective, this is why the Prophet Muhammad comes. He comes in the 7th century to refresh this, devotion to God and purity and passion, and religious transformation. But not long thereafter, there's a caliphate and power struggles and wars, and there's Shiite and Sunni, and this is why the Baha'i Faith comes, that these different faiths come to refresh this pure message, because humanity is always going to corrupt it. But that's what I meant to say about communism. I didn't really finish my thought there, is that this pure thought gets corrupted by humanity, right or wrong. I'm not here to debate communism. I'm just using it as an example of, like, here's an idea of how to achieve economic justice, and then it just gets warped into the worst economic injustice known to man. And when you're looking at the Catholic Protestant wars, of the 15, 16, 1700s, I mean, it's some of the worst, humanitarian conflicts and gross massacres in human history between, and we forget that, people were just mowed down by the hundreds of thousands in those wars. So yes, humanity corrupts what is pure. And it's a dance, it's this dance. And we have, it's funny, in Islam, they talk about jihad, right? But the greater jihad which means, struggle or holy war, is within ourselves. The greater jihad, which is most of what the Quran is about wrestling with oneself, your higher nature, your lower nature, your angels and your demons. And the lesser jihad is like when your faith is being threatened from the outside and you have to kind of fight back against that. But that's always often misused in context. But so just as we wrestle inside with our selfish desires, we also societally wrestle with our selfish desires. Let me say one last little story. I love this story. So in the Baha'i Faith, the son of the Prophet founder, whose name was Abdul Baha, came to the United States in the early 1900s. It was, 1920 something. And someone asked him, hey, Abdul Baha, do Baha'is believe in Satan? And Abdul Baha said, yes. And the journalist was surprised and was like, oh, interesting. How does that work? And Abdul Baha said, Satan is the insistent self. Mm-hmm. And I just love that. Like, what is that insistent self? Like, I want more attention. I want more power. I want more status. I want more pleasure. I want to be thought of better. I want to get my way. I want other people to do what I want. I want power. It's that struggle. That's the greater jihad, and that's the struggle with Satan. But it's not a guy with red skin and a tail living in hell cackling. It's not that guy.
Yeah. I'm not Satan, is what you're saying.
Steve Burns is not Satan.
Thank you, Rainn Wilson.
But you get the idea. But I love that, the insistent self, because I think about that with myself all the time. I'm always wrestling with myself, with my ego. And, this is another universal of faith. This goes to the heart of the Hindu tradition about, the self is an illusion and conquering the self and seeing the self.
Buddhism.
Yeah, Buddhism as well.
Yeah. First of all, you said a lot of amazing things there. I love the idea that these prophets show up every, half a millennia or something as a software update.
Yeah.
For our understanding of how to be nice to each other. It often seems that way,
Yeah.
Like it's a technology. Like they showed up and they were like, you guys got the wheel. You have bronze now. Bronze is good. That's going to help. Here is love. Here is altruism. Play with that for a while, right? And then we just immediately screwed it up. But yeah, that you've got me thinking now, Rainn Wilson, which is why I'm very glad you're here. Now I kind of see faith, at least in my mind right now, as a bubble, right? It's a bubble that maybe as people we can perceive, but cannot directly know. And as soon as we try to touch it with human means, corrupt human understanding, it pops and explodes and makes a mess. I feel like that is sort of what they mean by mysticism, although I think I'm maybe getting that wrong. Like a direct perception with something larger than you that supersedes and transcends your intellectual ability to understand that encounter. Did that make any sense at all?
It made total sense.
Okay.
That's the Sufi branch of Islam, is the mystical branch that is saying that, hey, we don't need mullahs to interpret the Quran for us. We don't need to just memorize the Quran and say it by rote. We can have mystical, transcendent experiences through being a whirling dervish, through chanting, through writing poetry like Rumi, through giving up our material means, being in contemplation and meditation, service to the poor. These are things that we can have a direct experience of God. In fact, there's a great book you should check out. It's called The Experience of God, Being Consciousness Bliss by David Bentley Hart. And it's very difficult to read. It's a thick one, but it is really a gorgeous exploration of, again, the experience of faith. And this is hard. Like, we have to allow the cognitive idea of faith, and you came up with a beautiful metaphor there, but God is like love. It's something you experience, It's, of course, we need to have some kind of intellectual connection to it, but love isn't something that we, write a thesis about. It's something you feel. It's something you live. And then you have a child and you love that child, and the child gets sick and you'll do anything for it. And that's love. Love is going to the Costco or the Rite Aid at 3 a.m. to get, cough syrup, and staying up all night, with a cold rag. And if we increase that love to be just from our children and our immediate loved ones to, a greater and greater sphere, then you mentioned altruism earlier. It's setting aside our own selfish needs, for the needs of the greater. And that is a spiritual impulse that goes against animal evolution, because animal evolution simply would be like, well, we've got to take care of ourselves and our pack. Why would we ever be altruistic for people outside of ourselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are unfortunately sort of reevaluating and revisiting that question a lot right now.
Well, it's official. It's cozy season. It's time to be cozy. It's time to snuggle up with a cup of tea and your favorite podcast. And when you do that, you might want to look good and be warm and look sharp. And if so, I'd like to recommend Quince. Quince is amazing, especially for last-minute holiday gifts, too. They have sweaters from Mongolia and top coats from Italy, and their outerwear stuff is no joke, especially when it gets really cold, like where I live. They've got down jackets, wool top coats, and everything is super high quality, and they cut out the middlemen, so they deliver quality and luxury without all the markup. So, get your wardrobe sorted out and your gift list handled with Quince. Don't wait. Go to quince.com/alive for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/alive. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/alive. So I travel a lot. I'm sitting here in a hotel right now, as a matter of fact. And sometimes I'll just be trying to watch sports or something on my phone, and it'll say, oh, you can't do that because you're in the wrong region. And I'll be like, okay, fair enough, but how do you know what region I'm in? That's weird. How is it that all of this information that you have in your phone, including your location, can be made so public? And isn't privacy more and more important as the internet continues to internet? Well, that is why I would like to recommend NordVPN. You don't need to go to Okinawa to watch your favorite anime, because no one will know where you are. And we all love to binge. And privacy is a huge
deal. So go grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/AlivewithSteve to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AlivewithSteve. I want to talk to you about doubt as it relates to faith. I know you and I both dig Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton is an amazing, I guess you would say he's a Catholic mystic, I guess is what you would say. But he's also just a brilliant thinker and a philosopher and a gorgeous writer. The words are always so good. I don't think this is the direct quote, but he said something like, faith is not the suppression of doubt. It is the overcoming of doubt, and the only way to overcome doubt is by going through doubt. My question for you is, do you think real faith has to pass through real doubt?
Yeah, I think one of the wrong-headed ideas about faith is that it is like solid and immovable. You know, they talk about like faith like a rock, faith like a mountain, you know, and faith is like a very fragile willow tree that bends, you know, and has to have flexibility. And there are times of great doubt when dealing with faith. Absolutely. And, you know, I know so many people that have had firm faith, and then something just horrific happens to them or their family. You know, their daughter gets brain cancer at age 12. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, I believed in God, I was in church, I was active, and now this happened? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, how can there be, you know, this goes to this idea of like, you know, this one philosophical concept of like, how can there be so much suffering in the world, especially to innocent people, and also have there be, you know, a God? I forget the name of it. I should know the name of it. It's a series of arguments and discussions around this issue. You know, if we are, as Father Teilhard de Chardin says, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, why is there so much suffering? And why is there an earthquake and a school collapses and 300 innocent children die? You know, what is it about this world? Why does it work this way?
Yeah. And this goes back to what I was trying to say earlier, is if faith is this attempt to perceive, if not understand, the unknowable, and we believe in this, even though we don't know, right? Even though we admit that we don't know, then where do we get off making all of these sort of very human intellectual presuppositions about that thing? Like that it's benevolent in some way. You don't know. You don't know that that force that you perceive is indifferent, malevolent, or benevolent. Like, you don't know. You just admitted that you don't know definitionally by nature of having faith in it. So why do we then sit back and say, but I do know that it's healthy. You know, I do know that this is a good thing. I never got that part.
Well, I do know that every spring the sun stays in the sky longer and grasses grow and buds bloom from trees and birds return, and there is a cycle of growth and renewal that is gorgeous and healing and inspiring. And I do know that when winter comes, the trees die and the worms go away and the birds leave and the land becomes barren and doesn't produce any fruit. And I'm sounding very much like Chauncey Gardiner from being there all of a sudden.
Yes.
But
yes.
I do know I experience these things. So I imagine the idea of birth, death, renewal, life, and the miracle of life also works for humanity.
God, I love you, Rainn Wilson. That was a very, very beautiful answer. All right, I'm just going to hit you with some of the old chestnuts. All that stuff you said about Jesus and all of the cool stuff he did, and all of these things that you mentioned as part of your Baha'i faith, which sounds so beautiful to me. I feel like we could do those without believing in things without evidence. I feel like those can exist and that we can live our lives that way, adhering strictly to reason. I don't see any reason to hold a belief that I cannot prove in order to do those things. Is faith necessary to live a moral and ethical life?
I agree with you 1,000%. And no, faith is not necessary.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that some of the greatest people who've done the greatest good on this planet Earth are atheist or agnostic and simply are trying to do in their hearts what they feel are the right thing and want to relieve suffering. And you don't need to be a Buddhist to witness suffering, see how suffering emerges, and want to reduce suffering in others. We all are hardwired to certain degrees for compassion. Mm-hmm. I believe that compassion is a spiritual virtue that can be cultivated, and that it comes from a more eternal part of ourselves than just our reasonable brains. Mm-hmm. 'Cause again, why would I sacrifice my own comfort and the important things of my life to reduce the suffering of others? That doesn't make sense. There is that altruistic urge that I believe is divine, but I know lots of people that live in that space that don't. I do think for the mass of people, our brains are essentially like in 3 chunks, right? The very base part of the brain is like, this keeps us breathing, keeps the blood pumping, keeps the, endorphins rushing and all that stuff working. And then right on top of that is the limbic system of like fight, flight, anger, response, sex, lust, procreation, power, greed, kind of a emotional reactivity. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which we know physiologically is kind of like more having to do with like considering things and weighing options and allaying the needs of the limbic system for something more important. And I think the brain is a parallel to the spiritual experience, and the spiritual experience and the spiritual guidance by the great spiritual teachers like the Buddha, like Krishna, like Jesus, and Baha'u'llah are about how do we waylay or tamp down those baser impulses and allow our prefrontal cortex decisions to take the reins.
Yeah.
But do you need a faith-based system to do that? I don't think you do.
Yeah. Right. I'm surprised. That's a surprising answer. And I think, I think that's really interesting. Talk to me. One of the things, I know very little about the Baha'i Faith, but admittedly, but one of the things I do know about it that I think is wonderful is that it places service at the very center of it. What does service mean to you?
Thanks. I think that service is in every spiritual tradition. One of the things that people greatly, greatly misunderstand about Buddhism is the service component. People think there's a westernized version of Buddhism it's very Eckhart Tolle. It's like just be in the moment, breathe, witness, non-judgment, kind of Zen, meditation, quelling anxiety, being at more peace and harmony in the world. And that's all important. That's all very important. But if you read the writings of the Buddha, go to the actual suttas, and the Dhammapadas, it's all about reducing the suffering of others. You reduce your own suffering and you gain a clarity so that you can be of service to others. So service isn't just a Baha'i thing. One of the beautiful things in the Baha'i Faith is that one of the kind of fundamental quotes is that work in the spirit of service is worship in the eyes of God.
Whoa,
so
say that again.
Work in the spirit of service is worship in the eyes of God. So whatever it is, you're a garbage man. Are you a garbage man to get greedy and make a lot of money so that you can have a jet ski? There's nothing wrong with having a jet ski or making money or supporting your family. That's not what I'm saying. But also, like, can you be a garbage man to say, like, hey, I get to serve my community by taking the garbage away and get to know the neighbors and build community and be a part of a place that I love? Can we do the same with acting, with podcasting? What about politicians? Remember when the idea was of a politician was that they were public servants? We just don't see that anymore. Politicians are power brokers. And, maybe it's naive to think of politicians as public service. But so a school teacher, a nurse, no matter what it is you do, a car salesman, like, how can we bring service into what we do? And that is worship. So worship is not just sitting in some church or temple or synagogue or something like that and having your hands and saying certain words. And that worship then includes service. And in fact, maybe it's the highest form of worship.
Talk to me about faith as it relates to community. You were starting to go there. Is faith something that is best practiced in community? It feels like when a bunch of people get together and practice faith in the same way, that's both when the good stuff happens and when the sort of human C4 explosive terrible stuff happens. So how do you think faith relates to community?
Well, that's a great question. I was speaking to this woman once, and she was talking about how she used to be a Methodist, and she got sick of church and blah, 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 blah. And she said, but what I really miss is, like, when I moved to this new community and I joined the Methodist church, like, everyone from the church came over and knocked on my door and welcomed me. They brought me, like, fruit baskets. And then when I was sick, I had a surgery. Like, for 2 weeks, they brought over hot dishes every night, And I do think that there is an essence of community care that can come out of some kind of religious, faith-based environment that you just don't see in the secular world. You might say it exists in the secular world, but I'd love to see hard evidence of, like, hot dishes being brought over to people. But let's dig a little bit deeper. One of the points I make in Soul Boom book is the early Christian faith perhaps was the first recorded a human experience where humanity came together not just as tribes,
Right. I read that in your book.
Yeah, you had Jesus visiting the Samaritans. What it meant to be a Christian was just you believe in the Father God and in salvation and the Son Jesus, love one another. You read the Sermon on the Mount and the Lord's Prayer. And you could be a centurion, a Roman centurion. You could be a former slave. You could be a prostitute. You could be a merchant. You could be Phoenician. You could be Turkish. You could be Egyptian. You could be Ethiopian. And they would all gather at these churches and pray and worship together. And as long as you had this kind of commonality of belief, you were all one tribe. That was maybe the first time in human history where all of these classes, genders, race, creeds, occupations were set aside for something greater. So at the center of faith is like, we are 7 billion human beings on the planet, and we are all souls, and we're all struggling, and we're all suffering, and we all have love in our hearts, and we're trying our best, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're one human family, and let's bind together and help each other and work and build community and make and bring those hot dishes and whatever it takes to uplift the downtrodden. And do you need God or faith to do that? I really think it helps. I think it helps because there's something beautiful and eternal inside each one of us. And that helps us see beyond, all of these like really minute identity roles that we all have.
I'd love to talk about faith as it relates to death and to suffering. You just mentioned suffering. When I went through a period of pain in my life, it cracked me open, right? And I think this is a very common, relatable experience. It cracked me open and was agonizing, but let a lot of light in, I think, in my life. And there's a quote, I don't know who said it, but it's something like, God enters through the wound, and I feel like that's true. A lot of people come to find faith in times of suffering and in times of great pain. And I'm wondering how that relates to the end of life. Is it especially imperative to have faith, in your opinion, at the end of life? Is it especially useful to the dying?
Well, I've had a number of friends die, and it's funny, the comedian Neil Brennan, I did his podcast, a funny guy, if you get the chance to see his comedy specials. Oh, so smart. And I was just talking about how a friend had passed away, and he just went, Sniper's Alley. And I was like, sorry, what? He's like, Sniper's Alley. Because you get in your 50s, Sniper's Alley. Bing, bing, bing. People just get picked off around you. And it really is, good luck with that. But one thing that I've shared with people that are struggling with their mortality, and we did a show on Soul Pancake called My Last Days that was all about lessons from life from people at the end of life. And I say, hey, don't worry, the journey's eternal, man. This 3D corporeal physical reality, man, this is a matrix illusion. We're just here for a flash. Yeah. And we're continuing on the journey. You are a soul that it is connected to a body for a few decades, and you're moving on to go ever closer to the unknowable essence on various planes of existence. And so, Godspeed, believe. I know this to be true, and I love sharing that with people, and it does give them hope. I do believe that one of the most difficult challenges of atheism is there is an inherent kind of hopelessness and meaninglessness in it, because at the end of the day, you're just an amalgam of molecules and atoms and electrical and chemical impulses, and that's it, lights out. The body dies, consciousness dies at the same time, and that's the end of the story, and it doesn't really matter or add up to anything. And I think that one of the benefits of faith is a deeper understanding of, hey, there is purpose and meaning here, and it is beyond this physical realm.
Yeah, I hear that.
This was a heavy episode, dude.
Yeah, I don't fuck around, Rainn. We're going for it here. Well, Rainn, thank you for coming by. I I adore speaking with you. And I just love that you have this giant brain and that you are out there in the world thinking deeply about all the important things and sharing that with people. I really think that you are a model of living an examined life, which is what we're trying to make this whole podcast about. So,
well, you're very kind to say so. I'm a deeply flawed, mistake-making human being.
Yeah.
I'm not a guru or a spiritual teacher. I'm just kind of trying to further the conversation, and that's what we're trying to do with the Soul Boom workbook. That it's a creative. It's got journaling. You can draw. It's got multiple choice. It's about God, the soul, life, death, purpose, meaning, service to others, transforming the world, transforming yourself, mental health. It's all of it in a really interactive, personal journal. And we're really excited to be sharing it with the world in November.
So you mean like I can open it and there'll be like little tasks for me to do and like, here, draw a picture here or fill this in. Oh, that sounds genius, Rainn. That sounds genius. Yeah. This is great, by the way. I don't know if you guys have read this one yet, but this is pretty essential. And the Soul Boom workbook sounds even more fun. I think more people should do that. More people should make interactive books. My favorite book when I was a kid was There's a Monster at the end of this book. Do you remember that book?
Oh, I do. Yes. And he's the monster. Spoiler alert.
Brilliant. And he was so mad at you. It was so good. Rainn, thank you so much for being here. And it's always great to talk to you. And I hope we do it again soon.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Let's go outside. So it does sort of feel like truth and faith are opposed in some way. Truth wants evidence, faith wants you to proceed without it, right? But maybe there is some sort of balance in that tension, you know? Like maybe one opens us up and one keeps us grounded. Honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea. These are big questions. What's a belief that you continue to hold on to, even though you know you can't prove it? And why? Interesting. Very interesting. Well, listen, thanks so much for listening and for coming by. And as always, I really appreciate it. And you look great. You do. Alive with Steve Burns is a Lemonada Media original. If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now's the perfect time. You can listen to the show completely ad-free, plus you'll unlock exclusive bonus content from me as I reflect on this episode. Just press subscribe on Apple Podcasts, head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. That's lemonadapremium.com. Alive is hosted by me, Steve Burns, and produced by Jeremy Slutskin. Our editor is Christopher Champion Morgan. Our associate producer is Akshaz Tharabailu. Audio engineering by James Sparber. Lemonada's SVP of weekly programming is Steve Nelson. Executive producers are Jessica Cordova-Kramer, Stephanie Whittles-Wax, and me. We'll see you next week. And you look great, by the way.